executive directors of the Exeter Historical Society. We'll start by reminding ourselves that tonight's program takes place in Misquamscook, now called Exeter, in Nadakina, the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples past and present. We acknowledge and honor with gratitude the Alnabak, the people, who have stewarded Nadakina and its Aki, Nibi, Olaquakak, and Owasak, the land, the waterways, the flora, and fauna throughout the generations.
Thank you, Barbara. Welcome again. My name is Laura Martin, and I'm the other co-executive director. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, both in person and virtually. And to learn about the songs and stories of the people who worked in the timber industry in the early 20th century through stories and song. The program is generously sponsored by the New Hampshire Humanities. You can learn more at www.nhhumanities.org. I'd like to make a few quick announcements. At the end of tonight's program, we ask that you take a few moments to complete the New Hampshire Humanities survey, which was on your seat. These evaluations help to ensure that the New Hampshire Humanities has the feedback necessary to continue to provide and support programming like this. We would also like to thank Exeter TV for bringing all our programs to our members and friends virtually. They are making it possible for us to reach a much larger audience, and we truly appreciate that. A couple of events. Our History Trivia event is coming up on Monday, September 23rd at Sea Dog Brewing Company. Tickets are $20 for members if purchased ahead of time, and $25 for non-members. Trivia begins at 7 p.m. and doors open at 6 p.m. As in past years, Barbara, who you just met, will be our quiz master, and hilarity will ensue. Visit our website. There's a link on our homepage to purchase tickets, and we really hope that you'll join the fun. Our next program will be right here on October 1st. Tom Spitaleri will be discussing early headstones in Exeter's cemeteries, just in time for the month of Halloween. Tonight, if you'd like to ask a question and you're on Zoom or Facebook, please put your question in the comments section and we'll try to ask it on your behalf. And now I'd like to introduce tonight's presenter. Jeff Warner sings traditional American and English folk songs. His banjo tunes, 18th century hymns, and New England sailor songs are rich in history and a sense of place. He has performed at festivals, folk clubs, and schools throughout America and the UK, and has toured nationally for the Smithsonian Institution. He is a folklorist and community scholar for the New Hampshire Council of the Arts and a former State Arts Council Fellow. His songs and stories bring us the latest news from the distant past. Welcome back, Jeff.
I am a jovial shanty boy, I love to sing and dance. I wonder what the girls would say if they could see my pants. 15 patches on the front and 16 on the stern. I wear them while I'm in the woods and home I do return. I'm on my jovial way and I'll spend my money free. I have plenty, come and drink lager beer with me. I love the girls of the Gatineau, they are so trim and neat. They are so slim around the waist, their kisses are so sweet. There's handsome Jane and Mary Ann and fair young Betsy too. Along with one of the Gatineau girls, I'll roam the country through. I'm on my jovial way and I'll spend my money free. I have plenty, come and drink lager beer with me. I often go out dancing, I dance all night, you see. Often all the girls, they grow very fond of me. I dance all night till the morning light. I dance until the dawn. Head and tail up like a steer, running through the corn. I'm on my jovial way, and I'll spend my money free. I have plenty, come and drink lager beer with me. It's a little song from a guy named, oh, thank you. I don't think anybody ever applauded in the logging camps, but that's all right. Thank you. It's from a guy named O.J. Abbott. Interesting fellow. Born around 1880 in London. Emigrated to Canada about 1900. Got a job working in the logging camps in Ontario. And 55 years later, a folklorist got him and copied down and recorded a whole bunch of his songs that he sang in the logging camps in the early part of the 20th century. So he's a wealth of information. And we'll get back to him for a telling song about Americans in the Civil War, Irishmen in the Civil War. If I'm not asked to do a program on New Hampshire logging songs, but it wouldn't matter, because the loggers, they went from wherever there was job to wherever there was a job. So they worked in Ontario and in Maine and in New Hampshire and Vermont and Massachusetts, Adirondack Mountains, of course, we'll go there, and then Michigan when it was time, and then Washington State and DC and they took their songs with them, and they were often the same, with some variations because of oral tradition. I remember when I first moved to Portsmouth, which was in the late 90s, I was driving up to see a friend in Lee, and I said, I'm on the Mass Road. I wonder what that's about. And then realized that it had to be big enough back before the Revolution to carry those enormous trees that became the masts for the British Isles and the English ships. So we had a logging tradition here. As a matter of fact, before 1820, we were quite a port, aren't we? Well, I think Portsmouth was like the 9th or 11th largest community in the colonies. Amazing. But then the Piscataqua River and its speed and all the rocks and the War of 1812 put us behind, and the fires in 1813 and 1820 put us behind the times, and we never quite got back till the Air Force moved in. So logging was big here in Portsmouth and down in Portsmouth, and then in Maine and Portland, Bangor. But where I come into the scene really was in the Adirondack Mountains, because through my parents' work, and I'll get to that in a second, I met a man when I was a kid named John Galusha, who was of Irish extraction, but had lived in the Adirondacks. His people had come over way in the 1700s, and he'd been a worker in the Adirondack Mountains all of his life, starting about 1890. And he was a wealth of information, and became good friends with my parents and taught them a lot about the song. So we're going to look there for sources and other places too. But a word about how we got to where we were in the logging trade. About 1840, if you wanted to get into the logging trade, you and a bunch of guys would hire on to a company and then go out in the fall and find a clearing someplace up in the mountain and hack away until you got some clear land, and then you'd build a house they called a shanty, had nothing to do with a sea song, and they would live there, 40 to 100 guys, all winter long, cutting down trees, dragging them to the heads of frozen streams, stacking them up and waiting for the spring to come when they'd push them all into the river and get them down to the logging towns. John Galusha, well, I guess I have to drop back and tell you how I came to be here and why I met John Galusha. My father was from North Carolina, was a YMCA executive, moved up to New York to take a job in the late 30s. And someone brought to his house a mountain dulcimer. Don't know if you've ever seen one, but they're instruments like that, and you put it on your lap, you play it with a quill, it only has 3 or 4 strings. relatively simple. And people outside of the Appalachian Mountains had never seen one of those. And my father said, wow, where did you get this? And his friend said, I got it from a mountain man in western North Carolina named Nathan Hicks. So my father wrote to Nathan Hicks and said, I wonder if you'd make me one. He said, you would if you send the money. He sent a letter back in very unlettered hand saying, if we don't have any money, if you'd send the money ahead, I'd make one for you. And in 1939, my parents decided to make the incredible trip, 800 miles in those roads, 1939, in a borrowed car to go down to western North Carolina to meet this family. They happened to take some pictures. This right here is 1939 in western North Carolina, right on the Tennessee border. And you're looking at Nathan and Rena Hicks and Nell Hicks, the kid, the youngest of their 13 kids that they had there in the mountains. And they lived not much better than the 18th century Scots-Irish who had settled in the mountains. They built whatever they had and they shot or grew whatever they ate. But my parents fell in love with them. My father was a great entertainer and singer. And so he was never shy. He would sing to them to get people to sing back. And they did. And they swapped songs for a weekend. And my folks said, we'll be back. And they did. They went back the next summer. And that set them on a trek to use their vacation time to find old songs in oral tradition, all through North Carolina and the Outer Banks of North Carolina and upstate New York and the Adirondacks and in New Hampshire with a woman who we'll meet in a second. They met John Galusha. Here's a logger, John Galusha, about 90 years old. And the little kid who looks uninterested sitting next to him is me when I was 3. I show this to kids. I get to work with kids a lot in schools, and I'll show this to kids, and they're not interested in much except, you know what? The name of the dog, right? So the fact that here's a guy who was born before Abraham Lincoln was president, and I'm sitting next to him, right? What's the name of the dog? Well, I happen to know, right? Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have told you. His name is Flash, and I know because I have a postcard from him. From Flash, yeah. So this is optical illusion. This is a well that he built. It looks bigger than it should be on this picture. And the house that he built. He lived in Minerva, New York, up in the Adirondacks. He said when they went out, when he worked as a young man, he said, you worked in the woods from can until can't. From daylight until dusk. And he said, where it was colder out there than a stepmother's welcome. He had a song that he sang to my parents about the logger's life. I am a jovial, that's what I was before. The shanty man leads a wearisome life, though some think it free from care. It's the wielding of an axe from morning until night, in the middle of the forest drear, lying in the shanty bleak and cold, where the stormy winds they do blow. And as soon as the morning daylight appears, to the wild woods we must go. When springtime comes, double hardships begun, 'cause the waters are so fresh and so cold. Freezing wet are our hands, freezing wet are our clothes, and our hands are almost froze, and our pike poles we can scarcely hold. But the rocks, shores, and dams, they give employment to our hands, and our well-banded rafts we do steer, and the rapids we do run seems to us 'tis only fun. We avoid all slavish fear. The shanty man is the man that I adore, and I never will deny the same. My heart scorns all you city foppish boys who think it a disgraceful name. You can talk about your farms, but give the shanty man his charms, for he fairly surpasses them all. And until death do us part, we'll enjoy each other's hearts, though our riches be great or small. I am in the old Northern Irish, north of Ireland, not Northern Ireland, but in the north of Ireland, there's a singing style that became general for Irish Americans, and that is to end the last part of the last verse with a speaking part. You know, instead of a retard or a big flourish, you just go into speech and then everybody knows the song's over. It's very handy. I find I do it sometimes not even when I'm not replicating Irish Americans singing. So John Galusha sang hundreds of songs to my parents that he knew out of oral tradition and talked a bit about what life was in the camp. 4 meals a day, and all you could eat. And haywire, keeping everything together. Matter of fact, I think the term of haywire, things going bad and exploding all over the place, comes from the fact that they used haywire to put up their dirty clothes and to hold things together. And if they ever snapped, that haywire would just go everywhere. So you had to look out where you're going. The other thing that's so interesting is how guys lived together all those months with nobody else around. Number one, no alcohol wasn't allowed, despite the fact they sang about it a lot, but they couldn't. There's a great museum in Blue Mountain Lake, New York, in the Adirondacks, Blue Mountain Lake Museum, which tells the history of logging as well as any place I've ever been. And they did some people came through and interviewed some of the foremen. They said, "Did they ever get a chance to go to church?" And he said he didn't think religion bothered his men much. So no. One guy said, who'd been a logger there, that you couldn't avoid the bed bugs and the lice, no matter what you did. And so you'd just get used to it. He said, you'd pick the biggest one off you, pet it for a while, and throw it on the next guy. Just keep it moving, keep it moving. And then entertainment. One young man wanted to work in the northern woods, and he asked the foreman for a job. And the foreman said, "Well, what songs do you know?" "I don't care if you can run the river, but if you can entertain the guys at night." So that's what they had to do. The only entertainment they had was themselves, whether they put dances together. So what would they play? Well, the instruments before about 1840 in America are largely fiddle and flute and drum. There's not much else. Banjo hits the scene about 1840, 1850 in the minstrel shows and becomes wildly popular. Everybody wants to do that. So later part of 1800s, the 1800s and in 1900, they would be playing the banjo. Guitars, we think of as the archetypical folk instrument, but in fact, guitars outside of the Spanish American culture weren't really a folk instrument until Sears and Roebuck started selling them cheap out of their catalogs at the turn of the century, and then people could get them inexpensively. So banjo, but they had to entertain each other. So a lot of unaccompanied singing, like I've been doing this afternoon. And also cheap instruments that you could find. I made a collection of those. Like these. These have been around forever. These are cow femur bone. A guy in South Carolina cut them for me and taught me how to play. And he said, you hold one tight and the other loose. And then you turn your hand over to make it click together. 2 ways. And then you try to get some speed to that. And once you get that even sound, about 8 weeks, once you get that even sound, you can stop the moving bone to syncopate. That's what's called playing the bones. So what would they sing? Once the minstrel shows got in, and all those songs started going around that people loved, this came from Dan Emmett, who worked on the Ohio River back in the 1830s and made close friends to a lot of black folks that he learned songs from. Then he came and with a friend started the Virginia Minstrels in New York in 1843 and started singing these songs he'd learned out of black culture. Talk about that for about 2 hours. But one of the songs he brought was, I went down the New Cut Road, spied the groundhog and the toad. Every time that toad would sing, groundhog cut the pigeon wing. Get out of the way, old Dan Tucker. Get out of the way, old Dan Tucker. Get out of the way, old Dan Tucker. You're too late to get your supper. Old Dan Tucker was a good old man, washed his face in a frying pan, combed his hair with a wagon wheel, and died with a toothache in his heel. Get out of the way, old Dan Tucker. Get out of the way, old Dan Tucker. Get out of the way, old Dan Tucker. You're too late to get your supper. Usually, New Hampshire Humanities loves to have the program and then have people have discussion about it. But this is folk music. So if you got any questions as we go along, please feel free just to type up and we'll discuss whatever you want to know. Just so you don't worry about it. This I was playing as we were all getting settled is in the accordion family, but it's called a concertina. Started about 1825 in England, but there are many different kinds of concertinas. The ones that got mass-produced about 1860 and became the sailor's instrument was an Irish one. It was push-pull, different note in and out. Keys on a box. English system, so I can play all keys. Questions about concertinas or bones? Leather-covered parchment. What are the bellows made out of? It's leather on top of parchment. Vulnerable. To replace. Good question. The buttons on the left and the right, how are they different? The two inside rows on both hands are white notes. And outside are black. So that's nice, because if you got an F sharp is right next to it. But the thing that's cool, but then feels like it's weird, is C is here, and D is here, and E is here, and F is here. They're opposite. Which seems ghoulish at first and horrible, but in fact it means you can make a chord 1, 3, 5 right there. Got a real wisdom to it. Called the English Concertina, 1825. The reeds were brass when they were first done, because, well, I might as well get to this too. Is a harp or a Jew's harp, and it came from Asia in the Middle Ages, spread all over Europe. People loved it, had a good time with it. So did the little reed that became the concertina reed, came out of Asia, hit Europe about 1800. People just said, we can make so many things out of this. And so all of our accordions and all of our harmonicas reed got to Europe about 1800. Made out of brass, made out of steel now. While we're at it. This instrument works almost no sound by itself. I'm sure you had one when you were a kid. Maybe you still do, and you won't admit it. So, if you put this little thing, you get a tiny sound. was is to use, it's like a little thing that you pluck. It's like a string, and my teeth are like the bridge here, and this pot of the banjo is like my head. So the little tiny sound goes to the bridge, and then it's amplified in my head. And then you move your tongue back and forth to change the pitch. And you blow on it to change the rhythm. I'll do this song that I learned from my father, who learned it from a guy who approached him at a fancy hotel in New York, and he said, "Frank Warner, I understand you like old songs." And my father said, "Sit right down and sing it to me." And he did. It was from his family, way upstate New York, supposedly descended down from George Washington's troops, who sang it marching down the Hudson River to take back the city of New York from the British after the Battle of New York. Little fragment of a Revolutionary era song. Doodle, doodle, doodle dandy, corn stalks, rum, and homemade brandy, Indian pudding and a pumpkin pie, and that to make the Yankees fly. And every Yankee will have on his back a great big pumpkin in a sack, a little molasses and a piece of pork, and away we'll go straight for New York. Doodle, doodle, doodle dandy, corn stalks, rum, and homemade brandy, Indian pudding and a pumpkin pie, that to make the Yankees fly. Questions? What kids like about it most is that you can say your vowel sounds on the Jew's harp. Should I do it? Yeah. Come on. It's worth the price of admission right there. So, inexpensive instruments, bones, playing spoons, which we may get to in a while, and Jew's harps and the like, and a lot of unaccompanied singing in the logging camps. And I met a logger back in the 70s through a folk music camp that I've been going to all my life. Larry Older was his name. Also from the Adirondacks. No, I don't want to play this. Well, it was in the 20s, it was a Girl Scout camp. And in the 30s, it was turned over to the Country Dance and Song Society to become an English and American dance camp. So people learn square dancing and English country dancing. But in the 50s and 60s, it morphed and became partly a folk song camp too. It's called Pine Woods, and it's down in southeastern Massachusetts. You want to know more, come see me, and I'll tell you a lot about it. Okay. We'll range the wildwoods over, and once more we'll lumber and go. Once more we'll lumber and go. We'll range the wildwoods over, and once more we'll lumber and go. Now, that's your part. You should be able to do that. You're not in television land, you should be able to sing that. We'll range the wildwoods over, and once more a lumbering go. Once more a lumbering go. we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumbering go. We'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. Once more a lumber and go. We'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. To the music of our axes, we'll make the woods resound, and many a tall and lofty pine come tumbling to the ground. At night round our good campfires, we'll sing while cold winds blow, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. Once more a lumber and go. We'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. To the music of our axes, we'll make the woods resound, and many a tall and lofty pine come tumbling to the ground. At night round our good campfires, we'll sing while cold winds blow, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. More a lumber and go, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. You may sing about your parties and your plays, but pity us poor lumber boys go jouncing on our sleighs. But we ask no better pastime than to hunt the buck and doe, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. Once more a lumber and go, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. When winter it is over and the icebound streams are free, we'll drive our logs to Glens Falls and we'll haste the girls to see. With plenty to eat and plenty to drink, back to the world we'll go, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. Once more a lumber and go, and we'll range the wild woods over and once more a lumber and go. Banjo, such an interesting topic. I read an interesting book from the Smithsonian called America's African Instrument. I think when I was a kid, it was still thought that the banjo was a homegrown American instrument. But in fact, it came from an amalgam of West African instruments. It all came over here. How many? 10 million black people we brought to this continent? They had a whole bunch of instruments that had to do with a skin head, kind of neck, strings. One thing that linked them all was the gourd head, this little tiny string here, called a drone string. Finger down on it. It just stays through whatever else you're doing. And it sounds that way. Eastern, Indian, right? Chinese instruments have that, but not European. So we know that it came over. They were all gourds. So people knew how to grow gourd when they came over as slaves. Cut it out, scooped it out, ate the insides, dried the outside, got an animal skin, put it over the top, then got some kind of neck. And there were sometimes 2 strings, sometimes 3, sometimes 4. By the time it got to the minstrel stage in New York in 1843, it didn't have any frets. It didn't come around until they tied into the note they wanted to get. And of course they were gut strings and animal skin heads, so moisture affected them dramatically. So after a while, about the turn of the century, they started putting these fancy brackets on them so you could tighten the skin against moisture. A fret is a little steel part on the neck here, so you know where to put your finger to make the pitch, to make the next note. It's like a violin, which doesn't have any of those things. So you had the opportunity to slide into the note if you wanted to, rather than go, yeah. Very African American singing. Right now we're in the North Woods. Guys, around trees all winter long. If they could avoid death from the trees falling down, they'd I'll put them on giant sleds and take them down to the heads of rivers. And they would build dams up above where they were. And then come spring, when the river began to thaw, they would push all these logs into the river. Water come down to start pushing those logs down to hill towns. And Blue Mountain Lake was Glens Falls, New York. It's difficult work, and a lot of men got lost in trying to do that work. Sometimes the logs got all jammed up. Then you had to go out onto those logs, free the key logs, and once they went, you had to get the hell off. John Galusha, our logging friend, a little part of one. From all you undaunted heroes who ride the restless deep, think on this heartful young man who underneath doth sleep. He was just as fine a young man as ever you did see. It was on yon Banshee River he met his destiny. This young man's name was James A. Judge. I mean to let you know. I mean to sound his praises wherever I do go. His hair hung down in ringlets, his flesh was white as snow. He was admired by all the girls wherever he did go. Longer song, but that tells you the essence of it right there. The singing style that I do is can't dance to it. Irish singing teacher, I've been under for a while, and you say, tell the story and you say the song. Don't worry about the beat. Use the melody to convey it. Don't worry about it. But then, you put instruments with things and you kind of like the dance part of it too. So I'm going to do this other tragic song that comes about the same thing, about a guy losing his life in a terrible logging accident. I learned this from a woman named Jean Roberts Foster, born in the late 1800s in the Adirondack Mountains. Made it out. She made it to New York, and she became a famous model back at the turn of the century. France and people like Uzi and Satie and all of that. Then came back and decided to spend her later years in social work back in the mountains where she'd grown up. She collected poems and songs while she was doing it from the people. Put out a couple of books. I want to help with a little song. Your part says, "My Girl's Waiting." Jean Roberts Foster. River driving on the Sackendall, floating on them slippery logs, sleeping in the frozen bog. My girl's waiting for me. Hard-boiled eggs 3 times a day. Wet as beavers, we hit the hay. great good pay. My girl's waiting for me nice. Big French Joe and I went out to break the jam when the logs gave out. Renegade, he gave a shout. My girl's waiting for me. Big French Joe, the logs drowned him, and he had no chance for to fight nor swim. With the logs drove up to the river's brim. My girl's waiting for me. His girl comes to me and cries, if he's dead then I shall die. Mon petit, he used to sigh. My girl's waiting for me. We will find him down below, around the bend where the water is slow, floating with his pike in tow. My girl's waiting for me. One more night and one more day, and the logs will reach the river bay, and I'll skin off these togs and I will say, my girl's waiting for me. Thank you. Good. Got this little dancing guy that I have to have you see. He's funny as can be. Nothing to do with the logging camps, except because I saw him when I first met him. He was an Appalachian toy. It was Southern Mountain Toys, sitting on a chair. No doubt, in the logging camp, those started and people were doing more step dancing. At first copying black people, but then later. Likes a spotlight. Yeah, one of his favorite songs is an old minstrel song from 1809. Oh, wait, it came down to us as Buffalo Bill. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light. As I was walking down the street, down the street, down the street, pretty little girl I chanced to meet, she was there to see. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light. I'd like to make that gal my wife, gal my wife, gal my wife. We'd be happy all our lives if she were by my side. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight, dance by the light. I got a gal, got freckles on her face, freckles on her face, freckles on her face. Asked her where she got it, she said every place. Tell me, won't you come out tonight? Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out tonight. Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight and dance by the light. I got a gal, she's long and tall, sleeps in the kitchen with her feet in the hall. She's good looking and that's not all. Tell me, won't you come out tonight? Buffalo gal, won't you come out tonight, come out tonight, come out people are singing, but a lot of people aren't. So, loves it when an audience sings. Brian. You follow him with. Well, a long time ago, I was asked to go down and do a program at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. New exhibit that they were deaf and dying. There's a lot in folk music. Doing some of my research, I came across epitaphs, which were really interesting. Coal miner is gone underground for good. "13 children, she did all she could." It was 40 years a loyal, faithful wife to her husband, died in the confident hope of a better life. What I really liked was I was up in Glens Falls in New York, and I came across this 1880 epitaph written by a woman who was a cook, logging camps. Clearly had written it herself, but long before her demise. Loved it, learned it on the spot. And said, "Here lies a woman," 1880, "here lies a woman who always was tired, who lived in a house where help was not hired. Last days on earth," she said, "friends, I'm a-going where cooking ain't done, nor washing, nor sewing. Everything's always just to my wishes. Don't eat, no doing dishes. Don't weep for me now, don't weep for me never, 'cause I'm doing nothing forever and ever." Just like I think within the songs, something like that is so direct out of a different generation, it really speaks to me. I get out of these songs as well. Direct link to people who sang them. Oh, stories too. A lot of tall tales from logging camps. What are you going to do? You got all night to entertain people. I said the size of the mosquitoes are outrageous in the camps. One guy said he was walking down the road by the river. He was getting tired. He sat down by a big stone. He realized there was 2 mosquitoes on the other side of the rock. Talking about it. We eat them here or take them back to the nest? I don't know what'll happen if we take them back. The big ones will just take them away from us. And this is what I like from a logging camp in Pike County, North. Pike County, apparently famous for its Applejack, its hard cider. This guy was a logger, but he was also a fisherman in the off-season. And he always carried a flask of that Applejack with him when he went fishing. His favorite bait was cut-up frog. He was out in the middle of the river, he was fishing happily, looked down on a rock, and he saw his perfect frog. He went for it with his hand, and the same time he did, so did a black snake. The 2 of them have this frog in the grasp. He didn't know what to do until he took out a flask of the Applejack and he poured it down the snake's throat. The snake gasped, gagged, and let go of the frog. cut it up, had perfect fishing, but about 10 minutes later, he was fishing and he felt something rubbing against his leg. Looked down and there was the snake, and it had another frog in its mouth. Good stuff. Do this as long as we can anyway. It's a long song, but it's also the most popular song in the logging camps. And why? Well, because it's all about them. But also because before that it was the most popular song for sailors at sea, which is the alphabet. The sailors took every letter of the alphabet and named something on the ship or their lives that had to do with that letter. Sang the song. John Galusha, remember our logging friend from Minerva and Blue Mountain Lake, he sang the song, but I never took to his melody until I was actually in Vancouver. I was a book on Vancouver logging songs. That's a beautiful tune, so I learned it. Later to find out it was actually a Maine tune. I brought it back home. Which we all know, B for the boys which use them also, C for the chopping which then does begin, D for the dangers we often are in. So merry, so merry, so merry are we, no mortal on earth is as happy as we. Hi-derry, ho-derry, hi-derry down, give a shanty boy grog, there's nothing goes wrong. E for the echoes which through the woods ring, F for the foreman, the head of our gang, G for the grindstone we grind the axe on, H for the handles so smoothly worn, I for the irons we stamp on the pines, J for the jolly boys always on time, K for the keen edge on the axes we keep, L for the lice which on us do creep. So merry, so merry, so merry are we, no mortal on earth is as happy as we. Hi-derry, ho-derry, hi-derry down, give a shanty boy grog, there's nothing goes wrong. Well, I don't need. Lovely tune, too. It's not modal, neither major nor minor. A lot of old folk songs all that. 50% of all the songs brought over from the British Isles, neither major nor minor. Let me try this. First learned this as a cowboy song. Probably haven't. Only later did I realize it wasn't a cowboy song. It wasn't Jackson, Wyoming. Jackson, Michigan. Logging story that got picked up and moved west and used as a cowboy story. I was on the drive in '80. Working under Silver Jack. When was moved to Jackson and ain't soon expected back. And there was a fella in amongst us by the name of Robert Waite. Not cute, smart, tonguey. He was a graduate. He could talk on any subject, from the Bible down to Hoyle. Words come out so easy, just as smooth and slick as oil. He said he was a skeptic. Well, he liked to sit and weave highfalutin words together, telling things he didn't believe. I remember one Sunday morning, the boys was sitting around and smoking their tobacco and hearing Bob expound. Hell was all a humbug. And he made it plain as day that the Bible was a fable. We allowed it seemed that way. Miracles and such like, there's too rank for him to stand. And as for him they called the Savior, "You're a liar," someone shouted, "and you better take it back." And everybody started. 'Twas the words of Silver Jack. And he slugged his fists together and he stacked his duds and he cried, "'Twas in that there religion that my mama lived and died. And though I ain't always used the Lord exactly right, when I hear a chump abuse him, he better eat them words or fight." Bob, he weren't no coward, and he answered bold and free, "Stack your duds, cut your capers, 'cause there ain't no flies on me." And they fit for 40 minutes, and the crowd would whoop and cheer when Jack spit out a tooth or two, and Bob, he lost an ear. But at length, Jack got him under, and he slugged him once or twice, and straightway Bob admitted the divinity of Christ. But Jack, he kept reasoning with him till the poor cuss gave a yell, and he allowed he'd been mistaken on his views concerning hell. So the fierce encounter ended, and they riz up from the ground, and someone brought a bottle out and kindly passed it round. So we drank to Jack's religion in a friendly kind of way. But of infidelity was checked in camp that day. Over Jack. We've almost had enough of this. Any questions? Maybe we'll end with a song together. How dare I? Oh, yeah, I do a program for New Hampshire Humanities, essentially of her. So, as we're doing a lecture in. I like these old songs. You should go meet this woman, Lena Bourne Fish. Hundreds of those songs. I knocked on her door. I hear you like old songs. Mother said she turned off the hook, took the grandkids out of her house. I said, I forgot to show you this picture too. 1941, Philco got interested in what my parents were doing. My mother. The recording machine was made by Philco, 41, but you didn't have to have electricity. Handle right here, lined it up to give you power. You put an acetate-covered disc down on the burner, put the needle down, and as you sang or spoke into the microphone, it would cut grooves. That's the way they started out, that way. It's such a hard way, because my father couldn't write music. Luckily, my mother knew really, really good. What happened usually was professors at colleges would go out to record people in the field and then come back with all these tapes and give them to graduate students who were then trying to transcribe all this mountain language and rural speech and didn't have it. Mrs. Fish, what last? So in between 1939 and 1966, my parents got 1,000 songs out of oral tradition. Library of Congress. We'll get them. Or you can hear my recordings of them. I have my brother and I in 2000 listened to all 1,000 songs, all the tapes. For a year, culling what we thought might be the most interesting year. A lot of it's very rough, old people who were past their prime. They had recorded. All right. So, this is Winterborn Fish. 2 long singing sessions. 3. Out of position, her brain. I know a lot of us. Piece of wonderful songs. This one is exactly the same system, it's the English system. 3 notes, octave lower. This is the range of the cello. The man who invented it called it a baritone. So the range of the violin. At first. Called it this, 1926. The other one, 1913. I was talking to a concertina expert in England 10 years ago. Read it and looked at it. Well, all the best craftsmen built. Good, it's good, but to have something pre-war, early time of concertina making. He's a great, because I'm not very good with it. I mean, I can take them apart. I can get the dust off them, rust off the reeds if there is any. Catching the bellows. Tuning, I can't tune the chord. You need to tune the reeds. A special system, you drop it in with a vacuum going across it so it sounds, and then you grind the reed. So I have, he used to be on staff at Mystic Museum. Did away with their music program. We changed it. Boxes. Great job. Sound better than they do at this moment. Okay, so a little Lena Born Fish song. East or west, there is one port that I love best, whichever way the wind doth blow, I'll steer for the bonny Bay of Biscay. The girl I love is awaiting there, with her eyes of blue and her golden hair. It's eastward high, westward ho, but return to the bonny Bay of Biscay. Night in my hammock I will sleep while we sail upon the briny deep. Tempests rage, wild winds blow, I'll dream of the bonny Bay of Biscay. The girl I love is awaiting there, with her eyes of blue and her golden hair. Eastward high, westward ho, and return to the bonny Bay of Biscay. Somebody said to me once, how many songs do you know? and we could go on and on and on, but I think they like to end these things fairly on time. Can't do that, but we can be close. Any questions about what we've done tonight here? Logging. Well, it used to be the press room, which was great for music. Rock and pop. Friday session. Thriving community. It was so important. One person wonderful. Yeah, and I also started the Portsmouth Marathon last weekend every year. Oh, yeah, right. So it's a free festival the whole weekend. Portsmouth. Yes, it's here, and I'm in it. So I left the reins in 2019. Years. I'm going to dissolve it. Rookies in the board, they said, no, we're going to finally back and live. Were the loggers mainly all white? Yes, in fact, they were. I even sort of pull back wondering how much banjo there was before 1880 or something. But yeah, they were mostly all white. I don't know of many instances of African Americans. They should have been, and they probably were, but I just don't happen to know. A lot of them were not, but many of them did, like in the song back. And then we'll back to the cottons. We'll go back to the farms in the summertime, and then a lot of them worked at sea in the summertime. Dramatic. I don't know the percentages, but yes, a whole lot of people who were just working the woods, and then other jobs, and then work the woods, and a whole lot of people who just didn't work the woods in the winter. And it would be hard, wouldn't it, to leave your home, family, the winter from October through April. Nice line in that logger's alphabet about stamping the pines. You know that they branded trees? Isn't that great? You know, so that they'd know what camp, when they got down to Glens Falls, they'd know what camp to give the money to. Yes, tragic. Great. Do we have any of the songs in our cultures now the way so many people had? People lived in an oral tradition time. Now they're assaulted by media all the time. You can't do anything before it's on TikTok or whatever they call it now. You know, so I'm sure there's jokes. There's what's the word? Scuttlebutt. What's another word for rumor and things that get passed on in the trade, language that then becomes, you have to be in the trade to know the language, and that's a folkloric thing. In terms of songs, you know, truck drivers maybe?
I'm thinking of trucks.
What? Hear it coming now. You're so right. I mean, without here, songs died. And now they're preserved somewhere. And you can find them. It has an amazing amount of stuff. Right. That's where you... Now I go, used to be that when I learned a banjo tune from a friend, I'd have to go home and play it 40 times and then hope I could remember it. You know, or I'd have to call them up and can you play that for me on the phone? You know, now I can just go to YouTube and find 8 versions of that banjo tune. So, yeah, in terms of learning, but in terms of need to get together with other people, share within their occupation or their family, it's not quite the same. Speak on, good. Oh. So it's not religious. Blessed event. I know out of Minneapolis there's something called the beer choir. They make pub sings. At a pub, and then people sing like they did in the 19th century, in the 18th century. Got a million pub songs, drinking songs, fun songs that people did. A guy called me up from Spokane. He said, I went to a beer pub sing here and I saw the concertina and I bought one. Can you give me lessons? So I gave Zoom lessons on concertina from my house to Spokane because of the pub sing that happens. So yes, there's much that's going on. It's beautiful for a lot of people who never would get acquainted with any of this material if it weren't for the media that we have. I hope that's true. It's human nature to sing, she says. I don't know, because people... Yes, but you know, people say, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. Everybody else does that. I can't. I got to get them. I work with kids in schools and get them singing. Get them singing. Once they're doing it, they love it. Music. Have any final words? No. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your attention. Hello.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.